Hey guys, Matt, IronTrap Garage, and today we're going to do another Hot Rodding 101 series, and today is a much requested topic, and that is hubcaps or wheel covers. So today we're going to be covering is the different types of ways you can dress up your wheels on your hot rod, and when and where they would be used typically throughout the hot rodding history. So let's get started. All right, so we're basically going to break the hubcap discussion into like 2 or 3 types of hubcaps. The first being dog dish or poverty hubcaps, the second being full wheel covers, and the last being artillery wheel hubcaps, for lack of a better term. All right, so I think the original poverty or dog dish hubcaps are what came on the wire wheels of cars in the 20s and 30s. Since we mostly focus on early Fords, we're going to talk about those specifically. So the early V8 wheels that are commonly used in early style hot rods, they all have a little tiny cap that could be considered, or we're categorizing them as a dog dish or poverty hubcap. They went just in the center of the wheel. They're usually just a little guy like this, and they fit in the center of the wire wheel. The nice thing with the early V8 Ford wheels are from 32 to 35, pretty much that span of wheels, all of the caps interchange, and every year the cap was a little bit different. The nice thing with this is you can change those caps around from 18-inch wheels, 17, 16, all of those, they all interchange. You can change the look of your wheel depending on the style you're going with. So if you want to run a 32 Ford with 16-inch wheels or staggered 17s and 16s, you can run the 32 caps that have more ribs in them to make it have that neat little nod to the 32. So with those caps, they pretty much only fit the style or type of wheel that you're fitting them to. So again, the early V8 wheels, those caps only fit that. If you're going to Model A, only those caps kind of fit those. And then when you go to offshoots of the other brands of Chevy and different things like that, those caps are specific. But again, with the early V8 wheels that are probably the most popular to be used, you can swap those caps back and forth. And there was some aftermarket options for those that made them look like spinners and different things, but factory options, ways you could do it with hot rods, is just swap them around year to year and put them right on your wire wheel. So for the dog dish or poverty hubcaps, you have much like what is on the Schroll coupe here. And that started early on, I think, with the 40 Ford wheels. They came with a little hubcap that goes in the center, and people a lot of times call them dog dish hubcaps. Moon, my dog, uses old hubcaps for a dog dish, so I'm sure that's where it came from. And those hubcaps can be interchanged. The nice thing, and we've covered in the wheel discussion, with the 40 to 48 Ford and even pickup truck wheels and later, they all use the same dog dish hubcap, so you can interchange them and change the look of the vehicle. So you can put numerous types of 40 Ford, 41 Ford, and so on and so forth. You can do that. Now, within the subdivision of that poverty cap or dog dish hubcap, there are the high dome or beanie caps, as they called them, which was a common aftermarket part that was put on a lot of these early hot rods that used, and the main reason was because they used early Ford drums or hubs, and especially in the rear with the banjo rear, they have a high dome to them because it covers the stub that sticks out from the hub that's really only on a banjo rear. The Schroll coupe has a set of these type of hubcaps. They were advertised in like every magazine. I feel like every kid or young hot rodder got these caps and threw them on pretty much any wheel that they would fit. They started out a lot of times on the early Fords, but they ran on through a period of time, and they even sometimes are like baby moons. They are nicknamed as well. But basically, the dog dish or poverty hubcaps, they would be something that is covering the center of the wheel, but the outside of the wheel is still visible. Now, as time has went on, there has been all kinds of aftermarket caps that you can get in the aftermarket, but in the beginning, it really was the early Ford wheels from 40 all the way into the early 50s. They used that cap that all interchanged, and then after that, Ford changed their type of wheel. Chevy also did, and they used like an outside nub that was still a dog dish type hubcap, but it's just a little bit bigger. You just have to make sure that you match the caps with the type of wheels that you have, and you will be set to go. But if you're looking for dog dish hubcaps, definitely the best iconic ones, I think, are these beanie type caps that have the high dome to them. They look great on a 50s and 60s era type hot rod. All right, so next one we're going to cover is full wheel covers, which is probably the one that has the most amount of different types of wheel covers that we're going to go over. So the full wheel covers, the nice thing once this stock vehicles started coming out with full wheel covers in, I guess, the 50s is when it started happening. Someone will probably correct me, maybe late 40s. They basically made them fairly universal after a handful of years, where they could just clip on almost any wheel, and hot rodders and customizers just went wild with pretty much swapping every cap with every car and wheel you could think of to get a different look. So full wheel covers basically are like it sounds. They are any wheel hubcap that will cover pretty much the whole entire wheel, or 90% of it. And there are, again, many different types. Probably the most popular is the flipper hubcap. The flipper hubcaps came on a number of different vehicles in the, I guess, from the early 50s all the way to like the late 50s, early 60s even. And these wheel covers, most of them clip on with clips that are on the outer edges that you can just push them right on. So if the wheel that the cap came off of is a 15-inch, it will fit pretty much any 15-inch wheel, because the outside rim of the wheel is going to have the same dimension, so you can clip them on. That's why they became very, very popular, because like I am doing on the Sweetheart Roadster, it has Ford-style 15-inch chrome wheels that have the early Ford bolt pattern, but we put Dodge Lancer hubcaps on here. So these caps just clipped on, and they give it a totally different look. You also see with the Fiesta caps on Oldsmobile, there are numerous different types of Lancer hubcaps. They kind of ran with that with all the different body styles. You will see different type of Fiesta caps, all the way up into even actually 14-inch wheels. You continued to see flipper hubcaps, but a lot of the custom stuff that we're into pretty much stuck with 15-inch wheels or 16-inch wheels. Now for 16-inch flipper hubcaps, they are not nearly as common, because generally that is an earlier style cap, and it would be an aftermarket cap. The most common flipper hubcap that you will see on a 16-inch wheel is the single bar flipper hubcap. This is more of like a 40s era type thing, maybe into the early 50s. These were offered in the aftermarket, and you will see them on like 90% of the early customs, and even some of the early like custom rods will run these hubcaps. Again, they were made to just clip over a 16-inch wheel. They had a single bar that went across the center. Some of them had different types of ribs. Sometimes the center bar had a little different design, but these are like the coveted early custom hubcap. You will find them on a lot of the 3940 Mercuries. You will find them on a lot of the like 40 Ford era customs that are started with that, 37, all that stuff. Even anything that's like a tail dragger that is 40 Ford or older, it is really common to see them on there. Nice thing with those caps are you really only need two, because most times the back end is sitting down lower, there's skirts on it, and you don't really need to run them on the rear. But those caps could be quite expensive. They fit pretty much any type of wheel. They fit the 40 Ford type of wheel, as I call it, or solid wheel. It'll fit a wide 5 or artillery type wheel, but it doesn't really matter if it's a full wheel cover and it has that flipper hubcap. It's going to be that early style that you will be looking for an early custom or hot rod. So the next type of full wheel cover that we'll talk about is also equally as popular, and that would be what I would kind of deem or lump together as the moon type cap. So the moon caps are the full salt flat caps, whatever you want to call them, the terminology you use, but basically like those full smooth or with a slight little dome to them would be the full wheel covers that you would see, and it really changes the look of the car. So if you want to give that like early kind of like drag race or Bonneville look, you can run those full moon caps. Now a lot of the different aftermarket hubcap manufacturers started coming out with all different versions of this, what is basically, I think, based off of those original moon caps, where they might have a slight more dome to them, they might have little ribs in them, and this is where it gets really fun to collect and change the look of a car, because there were so many different brands and styles of those caps in the aftermarket, and even into the actual manufacturers, they started to kind of mimic that. So you might see in the early Chevy wheels in 15-inch, they had a cap that looks a lot like some of the aftermarket wheels that came out in the late 40s, early 50s. So you can start swapping those caps around. Again, because they're full wheel covers and they have those clips around the edges, they will all pretty much fit. The next type of full wheel cover that is also very popular but is more common to see on some of the early 50s to late 50s type customs, and also even into some of the hot rods, would be a sombrero type cap. Cadillac had the sombrero cap that pretty much was like the hot thing that I think to steal off of cars parked on the street or in people's driveways and put them on customs and hot rods. This punk kids were putting them on, and they were a fancy wheel cover that came from the factory that you could pretty much put onto your car. Now the thing with some of the Cadillac hubcaps that are like lumped into that sombrero style, for different years they used those caps and they're called sombrero style. Those caps usually had a kind of specific to Cadillac type wheel mounting clips, and a lot of times they don't just clip right on with no effort. Sometimes you have to change the trim rings on the inside of them to make them fit your wheel. So do realize that you may have to modify the caps to get them to fit your wheel, but they give a great iconic look, and you will see that on a lot of the bigger style customs. They were running like sombrero caps or early 50s and mid 50s Cadillac hubcaps. And the last full wheel cover that we're going to talk about, but is probably the earliest style, would be the wheel covers that actually go over wire wheels. So in the, I guess the 30s and early 40s, there was aftermarket companies that were offering wheel covers that you could put over a full wire wheel and would cover the spokes and make the wheel look like a solid wheel. I think that was for a couple of reasons. A lot of the aftermarket manufacturers were probably trying to make it look like some of the higher end cars, Duesenbergs and Packards and different cars like that. They actually were using full wheel covers in those cars, and a lot of people were putting them onto their 32 Ford or Model A or whatever to make it look like a fancier car and dress it up. The hot rodders started taking those, I think, because of aerodynamics possibly, and started putting them on the early V8 wheels. And you started to see these like Stuart Warner, there was Lions, a bunch of different companies that made covers that kind of dressed up a wire wheel, covered the spokes, but also a lot of them were just like a full wheel cover that I think they were using for aerodynamics, was probably the thought process. But generally that style is thought of with the earlier style hot rods, and if you're looking for like a dry lakes era type car into maybe the late 40s, early 50s, that's definitely a look, and is a cool way that you can change the whole entire look of your wire wheel and actually make it look more like a solid wheel by putting those wheel covers on. All right, so the last one we're going to talk about is, we're kind of sort of fitting it in because I know we were going to get a lot of questions about, that is the artillery wheel or spider cap type hubcap. So the spider cap term has been kind of changed over the years, and the spider cap term a lot of times in modern street rodding is the cap that a lot of times have a little bullet in the center, and then it has just a little trim that goes around where the lug nuts are. You can buy them from all the street rod and aftermarket manufacturers. Moon sells them, everybody sells them. So that is what's called the spider cap. But what I think that kind of came from was the artillery wheels and the caps that came on those as an accessory. So artillery wheels, especially for early Fords, have a totally different bolt pattern, so they took their own type of hubcap. Unless you were using a full wheel cover where it would clip on that outside ring like we talked about earlier, you had to use a specific cap for an artillery wheel, or a wide 5 wheel as we call it with the Fords. So with the wide 5 wheels, they had all different hubcaps like the other wheels for different years, the factory caps. So you can obviously change them. They're kind of like a dog dish cap, but a lot of times they're a lot more, they're bigger diameter, a little more bulbous, less of the wheel is shown. And you could swap those around. They're pretty fun to change over. Even some of the single bar flipper hubcaps, they did offer them that they actually went on and fit the artillery wheels like I have on the Mercury. Another hubcap that is really popular for the artillery wheels or the wide 5 wheels for early Fords is the spider caps. So spider caps were an accessory cap that was offered by Ford that you could actually purchase at the dealer. They were different for pretty much every year or most every year of the wide 5 wheels. So in 36 was the first year of the wide 5 artillery wheel for Ford, and that ran all the way to 39. So these spider caps came out in different years, and basically the only difference is they have a different way the logo is actually stamped to match the year car that they were for. But these caps go all the way out, and they have these little protrusions that go around these spokes, if you will, of the artillery wheel. They give a really cool look. They are stainless steel, so you can fix them, you can polish them up. And like the set that I have on the free tee here, these were severely damaged. I was able to hammer them out, sand them, smooth them, and polish them, and they look really good again. Spider caps can be used on all different wheels, like I mentioned, but the wide 5 wheel specifically, this is a coveted hubcap that people are always looking for these wheels. Now, when you're getting into other brand of artillery wheels, those caps are usually specific to the brand of wheel. So if you're using a like Dodge artillery wheel, a lot of times they have a smaller, almost like dog dish, like the wire wheels Ford had, and Chevy, and et cetera, they have to use their own caps. But when it came to the early Ford wheels, there was a lot of different options you could use. But pretty much the rule of thumb is if it's a Ford wheel that's a wide 5 artillery wheel, the cap will fit across the board. All of those hubcaps will fit, whether it's the spider caps, whether it's the factory hubcaps. If you find the correct caps that are the single bar flippers, those will also fit. You just have to look at the inside mounting dimensions on those. Those are different because these have little clips that actually hold it in, and the inside diameter is different between 40 Ford and also the wide 5 wheel. But the artillery wheels are really cool. You can change them up by changing the hubcap that you use, or running no hubcap or spider cap, etc. By changing them, you can totally change the look of the wheel and take it from business with no hubcaps to something that is a little more fancy or show car-ish by putting on some polished stainless caps. All right, so that is our quick rundown on hubcaps in our Hot Rodding 101 series. So as a reminder, this is the Hot Rodding 101 series is not supposed to cover every single possible thing for that topic. We're just giving you the most common ones and some tips on how you can do whatever it is. So in this instance, just telling you what caps will fit what and what is commonly used. So the most fun thing I think about running hubcaps over maybe running some mag wheels and different things on hot rods and customs on these earlier style cars is that you could change the totally change the look of the car by what hubcap you run. So if you run like a 16-inch 40 Ford style wheel, you can run all those different dog dish hubcaps to change the look of the car. Or if you want to change it to more of a later look, you can run a 16-inch wheel cover on it and give it more of a show car or custom feel. So by changing the hubcaps, just like young guys and gals were doing back in the day in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, you can every season change your hubcaps or wheel covers or trim combination and change the total look of the car, which is really, really fun. So keep that in mind. It's always good to have some extra couple sets of hubcaps laying around. So if you get bored with your car, you can, for very little money, change the look of the car by just changing the hubcap combination. Thank you guys for following along. Definitely down below, give me a comment with what your favorite combination of hubcaps are on an early hot rod or custom. Thanks, guys. Catch you later.